point blank. It sounded like an animal. But I swear to God, it was standing on 2 feet.
Daddy, are we gonna die?
Woo! Cower in fear. The Dark Universe is back again. Wolfman, the first in of like 867 Blumhouse movies coming out this month, is a bold new reimagining of the classic monster tale. Just don't get it confused with The Wolfman, the classic film from 1931, or The Wolfman from 2010, or the movie Dogman. Trust me on that one. Don't make the same mistake I did. It was a massive disappointment when the movie started, and none of the characters were voiced by Pete Davidson. Anyway, jokes are over. No more jokes. All seriousness now. This is no laughing matter. We're talking about a movie where a man who turns into a wolf chases some people around. Okay, so this movie has been in the works for a while. It was supposed to star Ryan Gosling at one point, and then he was a producer on it, and then now he's not involved at all. It changed writers like 4 times, changed directors, until eventually they just came back around and decided that the guy who made that really good Invisible Man movie from 5 years ago should probably do it. That was probably a good call. Don't know why he didn't come to him first. He hasn't done crap in 5 years. But anyway, yeah, Wolfman. So this is obviously a reimagining of the original 30s Universal monster movie. I say reimagining. In reality, pretty much the only 2 things these have in common is there's a man who turns into a wolf man. If you go back and watch the original Wolfman movie, which is actually pretty good, it's just incredibly short. It's only like an hour long. If you go back and watch the original Wolfman movie, its strongest point is probably one, its atmosphere. Of course, all of those original Universal monster movies were known for just having really good atmosphere. And then also the Wolfman design is super iconic and actually really good in that movie. Like, it's really good makeup, especially for the time. So Leigh Whannell, this is his 3rd movie, obviously his 2nd Universal monster kind of thing. And this is a very good companion piece with Invisible Man, and that they are reboots, remakes of classic movies that try to kind of take these old gothic horror characters and put them in a modern context. Invisible Man was obviously based in technology. This is kind of a minor spoiler for this movie. Minor spoilers throughout. I'm not going to reveal any of the major plot points, just kind of details that really weren't in the marketing, or they were and I just didn't notice them. Invisible Man obviously was a technology-based character, and Wolfman in this one, it's a virus. It's just a straight-up virus instead of an ancient curse. So he's obviously attempting to base these in the modern times, in the real world. And the other thing that he likes to do with these movies is find some sort of thematic connection that you can make with these monsters to the characters. And if that sounds really incredibly vague, what I mean is that in Invisible Man, if you haven't seen that, it's a movie about domestic abuse and abusive relationships. And it's a really good movie if you haven't seen Invisible Man from 2020. It came out right before COVID. So I think everyone raved about it for like a week, and then everyone was freaking out because the world was on fire. And then we were all playing Animal Crossing for 6 months and forgot about everything that happened in January and February. Anyway, so The Invisible Man is a really, really strong movie. I would say it's probably stronger than this. Not that this movie is bad. I haven't looked at any of the reviews or anything. I don't really know what the reception to this was. But in my opinion, this is a solid effort. It's not as depthful or interesting as The Invisible Man, really, in its filmmaking or in its story. I think Invisible Man had more to go off of, just because I think you can do more with that concept. The thing about Wolfman is that, unlike Dracula or Frankenstein or The Invisible Man, this character doesn't really have motives or goals. He's just a straight up monster. So you can't really plot a movie other than just some characters kind of screaming and running around. This movie does its best. In fact, I would say its 2nd act is its strongest part. And I'll break down kind of why here in a minute. But this movie is far more straightforward and I'd say more of a crowd pleaser. This is more of your traditional big loud noises, spooky monster running around type movie instead of Invisible Man, which I thought was a really good psychological take. had really strong psychological horror elements that this one doesn't have as much. Anyway, so let me get into what I liked about it. The first thing was the lead performance I thought was really strong. The main guy is played by Christopher Abbott, and if you've seen any marketing, you know that he turns into a wolf man. There's actually 2 wolf mans in this. They should have called the movie Wolf Mans. Or I guess there's your sequel idea, Universal. Take that, Wolf Mans in theaters 2027. Ooh, it's going to make more $1 billion. Oh, I'm bringing Morbius back. Ooh, another Universal monster. Ooh, cross him over. I'm a genius. Anyway, yeah, so he turns into a wolf man. So I found his performance incredibly well done, especially from a physical standpoint. Him and this movie are at its best when it's trying to be subtle, or when it is subtle. He has a lot of really subtle inflections towards the second act of the movie where his body is changing. He's becoming more twitchy. You can tell like the way he's hearing and seeing is becoming altered. And the subtle aspects of his performance, I'd say, are the best. He's also good at becoming an animal and running on all fours and scratching doors and stuff, which he does a lot more in the third act, which we'll get to the third act later. But I found his performance to be at its best when he was just making these very subtle character changes. And I chopped that up to the strength of not only his performance, but also the script. The script is good at really being economical with its first act and getting this character on screen enough to where you understand how he is normally as in comparison to when he starts to change, which I found to be really, really clever and well done, kind of at the expense of the supporting characters, mainly his wife, who's really kind of undersold in how much personality she gets. They do a good job of being able to establish him enough to where you can notice the changes in him as an audience. And like I said, that middle chunk, I think, is the best chunk. It's basically just them hunkered down in a house at night, and you get this kind of family drama almost. This movie is at its best when it slows down, and you get that real slow, just dread of him slowly turning into a wolf man and people and the family not knowing what's happening. And you get their reactions, and there's some really, really good, clever filmmaking, especially in that part that kind of becomes over the top as the movie goes on. But involving the way that the movie is lit and how it looks from his perspective as in comparison to the other character's perspective, and how his perspective changes and becomes like the wolfman animalistic point of view as time goes on. And at first you don't even notice it. And when they did that they do a perspective shift at one point, back to Julia Garner's, who plays his wife's point of view, that I thought was really, really, really well done. Again, it kind of becomes way over the top and over CGI'd, but especially again, during that second half where it's being settled, that's what I liked about this movie the most, was the second part. The first act I thought was kind of boring and generic, especially the first like 5-10 minutes. I was really not into it. And then it really, when it was able to kind of delve into not only the psychological, but also the physical kind of body horror elements of Wolfman, that was when I liked it the best. And then the third act, that's when it gets just kind of boring and played out. And that was not the part I enjoyed in comparison to the rest of it. It just kind of turns into generic horror action, people throwing bricks at each other. That doesn't happen, but you get what I'm saying. There's a monster and they start screaming and running in circles and hitting things with knives, stabbing. That's what you call hitting things with knives. It's called stabbing. I'm recording this really late at night, if you can't tell. Speaking of visuals, I want to touch on the Wolfman design. They don't show it, I think, at all in any of the marketing materials, which I think was smart. I'd like it when movies do that. Nosferatu just did that recently, and I thought that paid off really well. Unfortunately, this monster design is not nearly as good as Robert Eggers' masterpiece Nosferatu's. This monster design is probably the worst Wolfman design I've seen in like a very long time, in my personal opinion. It's much, much worse than the original Wolfman. And I understand why they altered it. Obviously, you want it to look more realistic. Wolfman in the original 1931 movie, his hair is very straight and it looks like a movie costume, but it works in that environment with those obvious like sets and those over-the-top 30s performances. That movie works really well with that design. This, he doesn't look enough like a wolf. That's a weird thing to say. He just looks like a man with a skin condition. And he's really not even all that hairy. In fact, he has hair on his head for most of the movie because he's a man with a beard in real life. And then when he becomes a wolf man, his hair starts falling out. He becomes less hairy when he becomes a wolf, which is notoriously covered in hair. I don't know what they were thinking with that one. And then he starts running around shirtless, and he still has like no hair on his chest. I don't know if it was like they were trying to save money on the makeup, or because they altered it to be a virus, they didn't want to make it look like it's like he's too much like a wolf. But the movie is called Wolfman. Make him look like a wolf. You don't have to even do like the full prosthetic wolf head, which I prefer my werewolves to look like. I like them with the full wolf head. But you don't even have to do that. You could just make him hairier, but they didn't do that. So not a big fan of the werewolf design in this. I just found it really underwhelming, especially since they did hide it in all the marketing. I would expect it to be a more elaborate design, or something that was at least engaging, and that was more dramatic, like a more dramatic shift in his physical appearance, because his face changes, his jaw kind of starts to protrude, his hairline recedes, his eyes turn black, but really, and you can see his teeth kind of start to fall out. But like, see, that was the stuff that I liked, but it just stopped at a certain point. I wanted more of a physical change than I got. And again, like I said before, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, there's 2 Wolfmans in this, and neither one of them did I enjoy their design very much. So it was disappointing in that area. But the body horror element, like the transformation itself, is good. All right, and then again, to go to the realism point, the Wolfman in like folklore and in that original movie, there's a very specific set of lore with him that's very goofy. Okay, it's goofy. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a weird there's a weird pentagram symbol that appears on your arm when he's about to kill you. He can only be murdered by silver bullets. You obviously have the full moon thing. And because they are attempting to make this more realistic, all that lore is abandoned for this in favor of him really just being a dog man. Not that dog man, a meaner dog man. I haven't read the book Dog Man. Maybe he is mean in that. Who knows? No one ever will see that movie, so we won't know for sure whether or not he's mean in that. But yeah, because they remove all that to make it more realistic, he kind of loses a lot of his charm. The thing that they were able to do with The Invisible Man is, if you've ever read The Invisible Man book by H.G. Wells, he's a lunatic and like a sociopath, and you're still able to retain that element in the modern version because he's still a man who's capable of thoughts. So that element of his personality, when you adapt it to modern times, can stay the same, and he can still retain that thing that makes him the Invisible Man, even though it is set in modern times. The thing with the Wolfman is that because you remove all that mythology to make it more grounded, you lose the thing that gives this character its personality. So instead of it feeling like a unique universal monster movie, it just feels like a very generic running around in the forest for an hour from the spooky monster that's making very loud noises. And I will say about the loud noises, there are obviously your big boomy jump scares. The sound design in this, and I would say especially in certain points, the sound mixing is really well done. The way that the leaves crunch, there's a part where a faucet turns on and you kind of hear that animal growl as the sink starts pouring out water. And I thought specific points at that, the sound mixing was actually like noticeably well done. Other than that, it is a lot of just like generic stock animal growls and people screaming. I like my horror movies to have some charm, some style to them. And Leigh Whannell does his best here. I just think Wolfman, this is a hard character to do in a really complex way. And the main way they try to do that here is, again, I don't want to spoil too much. This is kind of a minor spoiler, but I want to talk about what the movie is kind of about. And obviously Invisible Man, it's all about abusive relationships, like between a girlfriend and a boyfriend, or a husband or a wife. In this, they try to tie it to like generational trauma, like parents not even necessarily physically abusing their kids. They never show that, but they establish that Christopher Abbott's, the main character's dad, was kind of verbally abusive and mean. And you see him doing that a little bit to his daughter, but he's trying to get better. He's trying to apologize for it. And neither of these movies neither this or Invisible Man are incredibly subtle films in any ways. So what they try to tie that to here is that the Wolfman virus, like generational trauma, is passed down from person to person, and that virus turns you literally and figuratively into a monster. They try to correlate those two things together, and it doesn't work really as well. Again, because the Wolfman character is not capable of complex thoughts, it's very difficult to address any of these things in a really meaningful way or anything past a surface level. And this movie really doesn't ever get past that point. It's very hit you in the face with what it's trying to get at, and it's not really even saying anything new or particularly insightful on the topic, especially since this topic is being brought up and addressed a lot for good reason in a lot of recent movies these past couple of years. I just don't think this movie brings a whole lot of new to the table on that front. So I found it kind of weak thematically, and that coupled with just kind of how generic the third act was, which kind of just ended up with two wolves kind of hitting each other and people running around in a kitchen. Every Blumhouse horror movie at some point has characters fighting some other character in a kitchen. I don't know what it is about them. Is it to save money? Did they like buy a bunch of fake like pans from Costco that they need to use in all their action sequences because Jason Blum bought too many one time? Why are they all set in kitchens? What is up with fighting in kitchens? Jason Blum, did you fight someone in a kitchen? Why does that keep happening? But yeah, this is just unfortunately just not a very interesting movie, which is kind of weird because Leigh Whannell's other two movies, Invisible Man and Upgrade, I think have a lot going on under the surface. And this was kind of lacking, and I think it's mostly just because of the character itself. So I do think they do their best. And again, I do like the performances. I think Julia Garner, I haven't brought her up yet, but she is really good in this role. Her character doesn't have a lot to her. I wish she had more going on. I wish it would have focused more on her in the beginning. It's unfortunate just because in the second act, he becomes such a monster that he's not capable of, he's no longer capable of being our protagonist. So we have to shift over to Julia Garner's character who plays his wife, and she's just not as well developed. And that is, again, it's not her fault. She does a good job with what she's given. It's weak in that regard. And then their daughter's cute. They have a daughter. She's good. I'm not going to say anything about her because she's fine. She's cute. She does what a little kid in a movie does. She has like one thing she does with her dad, and it comes back at the end. There is some setup and payoff in this. None of it's pretty good. There was one thing I thought with being set up in like the very first scene that just ended up going nowhere, and I think it might have just been because they forgot that they wrote it into the movie, or they never meant to have it go anywhere, but it was really weird that they pointed it out. If you've seen it, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to do spoilers, so I'm not going to say specifically. If you want to know, tweet at me, I guess. I'll tweet it. I'll DM you. I don't know how this works. Anyway, there was a thing that was set up that I thought would be paid off, and it wasn't. But overall, I would say it's January. We've made our way out of the Christmas movie season. If you're looking for an excuse to go, you could do a lot worse. This is a pretty solid time at the movies. I wouldn't say it's worth a rewatch or it is justification enough to launch the Dark Universe again. I already made one Dark Universe joke at the beginning. But, any excuse to play that Mummy trailer clip. Yeah. Look at that. Look at Tom Cruise running around, making that funny noise. Dark Universe. Those were the good old days. Remember that photo? Remember that photo with everyone in it that didn't go anywhere? Good times. But yeah, you could do a lot worse. This is a solid time. It's not too jump scare heavy. It's not annoying like a lot of B-level horror movies are. January is usually filled with just straight trash, and this isn't straight trash. So if you're looking to go to the movies, this is a good enough time. I don't think it'll be a thing we're talking about in 4 months. It probably won't even be a thing we're talking about in like 4 weeks or 4 days, but it's fine. Wolfman, I guess you get a recommendation. Sure, I recommend Wolfman. Go see Wolfman. Also, what is up with these titles? I made a joke about it in the opening. There's the Wolfman, there's the Wolfman, one word, and then this one is just Wolfman. You can just call it the Wolfman again. It's fine. I'm already going to have to put a date next to it in the title anyway to clarify for the algorithm. All right, we're all going to put dates next to it. We're just doing that for every movie now. Who cares? Anyway, Upgrade is better than this movie and Invisible Man. Bye.